We call them government employees or bureaucrats, and sometimes we call them paper pushers. It can range from an FBI agent to working at the State Department to being a postman to working at an office in the government. I'm Lao Jiang, and today we're going to talk about civil servants in the USA. By the way, if you want a copy of this video, click on the QR code. I couldn't find anything interesting about average Americans who had gone through the painful process of the civil service exam and then working now in civil service. I found it for the Philippines, for India, and for England. A lot of people talking about the test and how to take it and how to do better and what life is like in the civil service, but not for Americans. And at first I was like, why can't I find any? And then it dawned on me. We don't like the idea of civil servant. Like, we don't like serving people. That's not our style. And for me, I know growing up, the idea of civil service is that it's a boring job. You have to wear a suit. You're in this horrible, sad office, just pushing papers around. And I think that's why I couldn't find any really good stories about average American civil servants. But let's take a look at how things go for civil service in the United States. The civil servants exam is not easy. It's about 170 questions long, and it's also different for each job that you might be looking for. It has, of course, stuff about grammar and reading, comprehension, and vocabulary. It has stuff on math, data analysis, and looking at charts and graphs. And then it also has clerical stuff, if you're going to work in an office. Now, I went and found a few test questions, and I tried this one, and I got it wrong. And then I tried this one, and I got it wrong too. No job for me, I guess. Of course, people panic about this test because it's difficult, and as adults here in the United States, we don't typically take tests. Well, they have prep courses, you can study online, they have old examples of questions that you can also study, and that's how people usually generally pass it. What people like most about being a civil servant is the stability of the job. You're always going to have the job unless you make some really big error. The average civil servant in the United States right now makes about $65,000 a year. That's about $31 an hour. However, it's broken up into local, state, and then federal. The federal civil servants make the most money because they're involved in higher stakes issues with the government. There are also a lot of medical benefits, sometimes some education benefits. Probably the number one thing are the retirement benefits. Even after you finish serving the country, they're going to continue taking care of you through your retirement. And also, as a civil servant, if they ask you to work extra overtime or do anything special, you're going to get paid for every single minute that you work. Private companies probably pay a little bit more, but as a government employee, you feel like you're taken care of. Sometimes they take care of your transportation costs. Sometimes they give you housing, plus all the other benefits, your medical and your stability. The other thing is, as a government employee, especially if you're working in some of the higher jobs, you obviously are around other people who have a lot of influence in the world and in the country. And so people like being around that kind of power. For regular citizens like me, a lot of times we look at them and we say, oh, they're just bureaucrats, and that everything involves a lot of red tape. And we use that to say there's just so much mess going on, and you try to get something done and it just goes from one office to another, and it never feels like anybody knows what they're doing. So that's why we call them paper pushers and bureaucrats. Like, it's just a messy, confusing job. But if you are a civil servant, the goal, the mission of your job is to make the government run more smoothly. So there is prestige in these jobs. And even as a postal worker, somebody delivering mail to the house may not seem that important to us on a daily basis. But people look forward to getting the mail. The mail is super important for a lot of people. My mother's 78 years old, and she still looks forward to getting the mail every single day. I'm Lao Jiang. I'm going to go study those questions.